He's your baby. So me and this dog just wanted to make a video real quick talking about what I've been reading lately. I've got 4 books on my plate right now, and I just wanted to talk about them for a little while. Your breath is terrible. You want to go lay down now? Or are you going to stay here? Okay, we'll figure it out. Lately, I have been wanting to read more about the history of sword and sorcery and Appendix N. And after that disaster that was the Appendix N book, I thought I needed to find something else. So I cracked open Flame and Crimson, A History of Sword and Sorcery by Brian Murphy. And to say that this book is comprehensive is a severe understatement. Holy crap. I don't know how he managed to pack that much information into about 300 pages. He goes into the nitty gritty about the foundation of sword and sorcery, and he's got the receipts. I mean, holy crap. This book has all of the annotations, all of the wonderful footnotes, little sidebars, everything. It is so good, but it is dense. It's very well written, but there is a lot of information there, and I have had to pace myself. I'm about halfway through it now, and so far I've had a comprehensive history of sword and sorcery, a comprehensive history and literary critique of Robert E. Howard's writing for sword and sorcery, a comprehensive history of C.L. Moore's writing, Fritz Leiber, Henry Kuttner, H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith. I forgot about the best one of the group. It's so good. If any of you out there are even remotely interested in learning about the history of sword and sorcery, pick up a copy. It's great even if you just read a chapter. There's a chapter that's just the history of sword and sorcery, like the origins, and then there's one that's what is the definition of sword and sorcery? Where do we get that term from? Which it's from Fritz Leiber, but he talks about what makes sword and sorcery books what they are. It's very, very good. And, you can skip later to see the revival from the 60s and the Ace paperbacks, thanks to Lynn Carter and L. Sprague de Camp, even though they butchered Conan. It's just really good. I really think that just about anyone out there that likes sword and sorcery can get something out of it. One of the things that I have gotten out of it is how bad I need to read more from the early sword and sorcery. I have not read C.L. Moore yet, and I am ashamed. I have Black God's Kiss queued up already. I'm going to get to it as soon as I can. And after that, I just need more Clark Ashton Smith in my life, some Henry Kuttner. So that's stuff I'm going to be working on later. And I got to be cooking. I took August off, and then I took the first week of September off because I had a lot on my plate, but we're back. I'm reading Whispering Nickel Idols from Glenn Cook, book 11 in the Garrett P.I. series, and it is started off as you would expect. It's a little different this time. He didn't start the story with Garrett waking up hungover, and he didn't get robbed or beaten in the first 10 pages, so that's good, I guess. Man, it just dives right into the story. So Whispering Nickel Idols starts right after Angry Lead Skies, but it is tied closer to Fated Steel Heat. So Angry Lead Skies is amazing, but it's a little offshoot from the main story, but it establishes a major character. And Whispering Nickel Idols almost reads like a sequel to Fated Steel Heat because there's quite a few things from that are carrying over to this. He basically has an engagement that he has to go to that was set up during Fated Steel Heat, which doesn't really matter unless you're already this far in. And, if you're this far, then why am I telling you? Because you've already read 10 Garrett P.I. novels. But anyways, it's very good. I am burning through it. I cannot believe how synchronized my brain is now with Glenn Cook's writing. I was reading Flame and Crimson before this, and it was just slow. And I mean, yeah, it's nonfiction, and I'm really taking my time with it. But as soon as I crack open a Garrett novel, I just rip through the pages, and it's wonderful. It's such a good feeling. It's really, really good. The premise of this one is Garrett has been contacted by the lawyer of the leader of this criminal organization in Tun Fair, and it's not the actual leader, it's the father of the leader. He's just a figurehead because of something that happened way back, 6 or 7 books back. And the lawyer wants to know basically what happened or what's going on with that figurehead. Garrett does not want to do it because Garrett's pretty happy with the way things are going right now, and he really doesn't want to stir the pot with the person that's actually in power. And it's just really interesting, but he's Garrett, so he's going to dig into it. And it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with this. I'm already super intrigued with what the mystery is. Really suspicious stuff is happening. Some guy was found burned to a crisp, but nothing around him was blackened, and it was in a very flammable building. This isn't the first person to be found like this in the last few months, and that has started Garrett's hunt for what is going on. It's going to be great. I am convinced that even if the overall writing quality degrades in this series, they're just so fun that I don't care anymore. Maybe that's like my brain coping with the sunk cost fallacy or something, but I don't think it is. They read just as good as the earlier books. I'm going to reread the first book as soon as someone else will do it with me. So let me know if any of y'all want to read Garrett P.I. Numero Uno, which is Sweet Silver Blues. But yeah, it's going great. This one came out in 2005. We're getting toward the end of what I think of Glenn Cook's writing career as like top notch. Like this is peak Glenn Cook. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing where this one goes. I will say it sucks that these books aren't on audio because they would be perfect for it. There's a Garrett short story that's on audio with the best of Glenn Cook. I don't know if I liked it very much. I didn't listen to much of it because it spoils later books, but I think they would have to nail down the perfect narrator, and I'm not sure who that would be. Well, let's move on. Another book I am slowly chipping away at. I use it as a palate cleanser like my other giant tomes that I talk about in books I'm reading slowly. That's a different video. I'll put a link in the description. I'm reading Debt, The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. I love it. It is amazing. I mean, you have an anthropologist who is just talking about how before there was money, there was debt. One of the very first things he starts talking about that's really interesting is there was never a barter society that's like, well, I've got 3 goats and you're a carpenter, so I'll give you 3 goats and you'll build my house. And it's like, that's not how it works. It was literally, oh, you're a carpenter and I have goats. Well, if you'll build this, I'll sell these goats and we'll settle it later kind of thing. So there was always like a this and that with debt, not a one-to-one barter system. And that is just really fascinating. And the more I look into David Graeber, who also wrote Bullshit Jobs, which I will be reading hopefully soon, the more I like him. I watched an interview with him where he was talking about 5 different bullshit jobs that people do at different places. And it was just like, oh yeah, I see those all the time. I'll link that in the description too, if I remember. And if I don't, leave a comment and I'll fix it. Every book he's written looks absolutely fascinating. And what little I've read of Debt, which is like a third of it, and it's not a small book, is very good. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of them. So this is fun. I heard about David Graeber and Debt from the weirdest source. So I listened to a podcast called Reading D&D Aloud. I will put a link for that in the description as well. And on an episode back in May, they had Jonathan Tweet on, and he was the lead designer for D&D 3rd edition. And he also was a co-creator of 13th Age. And, you know, I love 3rd edition, and 13th Age looks awesome. I really want to play it. So when the 2nd edition comes out, I will be buying a copy. But it was just really fascinating because at the end they were asking Jonathan Tweet, they're like, oh man, yeah, you sound like you read a lot, blah, blah, blah. What books would you recommend for a dungeon master that just wants to get better? And he was like, oh, read Debt by David Graeber. Now that I'm reading it, I'm like, wait, why? But his whole thing was basically saying that it gives you a better grounding for what a society would have been like back then, so that you're not running into this dumbassery of like, oh, well, I'll trade you 2 swords for your 2 horses or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, that's not how that works. It's like, take on some debt or something, dummy. I just thought it was interesting that that was one of the books he recommended for becoming a better dungeon master. So I was like, hey, I'll check it out. Why not? I want to be a better dungeon master. It's been really good so far. And this last one, I just started it. I'm like maybe 5% of the way into the book, is The Lions of Al-Rasan by Guy Gavriel Kay. Yes, I immediately started another Guy Gavriel Kay novel after I finished Lord of Emperors, which I'll talk about at the end of the month in my wrap up. There is a special place in my heart for Spanish medieval history and Spanish medieval architecture. And the fact that this book is just all of that has brought me nothing but joy. The prologue alone, where he's talking about going through, I guess, like a palace or something where this caliph is located. He's describing these different beautiful parts of this palace. And I'm like, I know exactly what he is talking about. It is some of my favorite architecture of all time, and it lives in my head rent-free. So thank you, Guy Gavriel Kay, for just reinforcing that in my brain. I am generally a pretty visual reader. Like I tend to picture what's going on in my head as I'm reading it. And this is just picturing in my head 4K, HDR10, whatever video buzzwords you want to use. It's fantastic. Yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And when it comes to what I'm going to be reading next, I have a couple of Conan books because it's still Sumerian September, but the last one I read did not go very well. That was Conan the Rebel by Poul Anderson. I didn't like it at all. And so I'm giving the Conan pastiches one more try with one of the better Robert Jordan ones. I had to do a little research because Steve Donahue read a Robert Jordan one and he said it was terrible. And I thought, oh no, those were the ones I was going to read next. So I'm going to read one of the better ones and see how it goes. And if it's a stinker too, I'm spending the rest of Sumerian September reading Conan comics because I love comics and it's been a long time since I've read any, and I've heard nothing but great things about the original 100-issue run of Conan the Barbarian by Marvel. So I will dig into that if this goes poorly, and I might just dig into it anyways because it's been way too long since I've read comic books. And other than that, I'm going to read more John D. MacDonald. I can't go more than a week or two without reading a Travis McGee novel at this point. I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out of them. I'll probably just start them over. I'm going to make a whole separate video about him because the books are just great. And the fact that he's Glenn Cook's favorite author has really changed the way I look at Glenn Cook's writing. I think that's it for now. Let me know in the comments what you've been reading for the last week or two. I'd love to hear about it. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.